Welcome everybody on Zoom. And we've got, do you want to go around the room? No, we're good.
I think we're good.
We're good. Okay, I did email out an agenda. I hope you guys have it. I've got some paper copies for those who are in the room. And the first thing I just wanted to start, it may not even take that long, was just if you guys wanted to get me up to speed on what I've missed since you guys have been starting. If you've had guests that you've already talked to and invited to the table to share their information, that would be good to know. Or if you've got anything you want to share with me to get me up to speed. And I'm going to take some notes on my computer.
This is your audience.
And I'm not going to remember anyone's name. We had, what's her name?
We had
CJAM.
Yes, you know.
Liz Bernard?
Liz, yeah,
she
Liz
came,
is-
and that was very interesting.
Yeah.
And then another, what's her name?
Christine McAfee
Yes,
came
yeah,
from.
that's right.
She's
from-
great, okay.
From JDAI.
Yeah,
And that's really, and then we really just got caught up in the job description, and then we got all kinds of applicants and looked at all of them and couldn't figure out what we were doing, basically, and ended up, I think Angie suggested that you might be a good possibility, and that just seemed like the perfect
I thought she was my
solution.
friend.
I think it'll be
If I could
perfect.
add, Jim Shelton from the
Oh,
chamber
yeah.
Yes,
has been very interested
he
and
is.
engaged.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
he really is.
By attending? Is
Mhm.
that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And inquiring as to whether there would be a meeting on a certain date or whatnot.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. That's helpful to know. Anybody on Zoom want to fill me in on anything? Yes, no, no?
Nope.
Okay, so the next thing I wanted to talk about was just coordinating with the Justice Reinvestment Advisory Council. Right before I left county government, I sent out an email that said, hello, you guys should talk to each other because your work is very similar. So what I put together and sent to you today was I followed the statute for the Justice Reinvestment Advisory Council, so you would know what state law says they're supposed to do. And they are, for us locally, our Community Corrections Advisory Board is
Correct.
our JREC. So their next meeting is in August. I have that on my calendar. There is a council member, and you, I think, Peter, might be the council member on that board. And there's a commissioner on Community Corrections Advisory Board.
That's me, although they kind of had a habit of having their meetings right when the commissioners' meeting takes place.
Oh, Linda's on the call.
The next one is
Good.
like August 29th at like 5:30, I believe.
Yeah.
And so I think that.
Oh, wait, no, that's their typical time. Yeah, I often get there for that. I'm thinking of JDAI.
Oh,
Oh, you're
yeah.
in JD.
Yeah, because that is
Yeah.
usually,
Yeah.
So you'll see. You can see how,
Can I correct you?
yes, please do.
The meeting's at 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock.
Oh, okay.
Thank
5
you.
o'clock in person at the Community Corrections Office.
Is it the 29th of August?
If that is the last Monday of the month, let me check.
Okay,
And I can confirm that that's on the
That's correct.
county's calendar.
Yeah.
okay.
So
That's correct.
August 29th at 5 o'clock at the Community Corrections Building.
Yes, in person, Community Corrections, correct.
So what I put together in these notes are what the statutory duties of JREC, and then our Criminal Justice Response Committee, I took, just a little bit from the local ordinance that says you guys serve in an advisory role to assist county government in review and where appropriate recommending steps for implementation of the criminal justice studies. And particularly as it relates to community resources necessary to divert individuals from the system or transition them. And then listed are the duties that I will undertake as the coordinator. And I embedded some questions that I have in there. So the rest of the meeting, again, we can open it up however you want to do it. I wanted to talk about your short-term goals, your long-term goals. I'm going to get some of the questions that I have embedded in here answered. And then I want to talk about, structure, whether we need subcommittees or, you know, in our meetings, that kind of thing. So anybody got questions so far?
Just my internet's not working, so I
Oh.
can't see your notes.
Oh,
that you
gotcha.
sent
I
out.
got an extra copy.
And, well, that's handy dandy.
Get 'em.
And hopefully she printed in color because the questions are in purple.
Woo, yes.
Oh, then I want one.
Oh, yeah, I have here, let me.
I
give
can make
you-
a copy.
Oh, no,
Um,
it's okay.
You know what? I have mine online. There are my. And then here's this,
Okay.
those are the things in there. Those, yours didn't get completely stable.
I apologize. I did not, I was at the hospital all afternoon. and
Do you
for
need a
some
copy?
reason,
I don't have it. I don't have any more
Computers
copies.
don't work at the
Did you
hospital.
send that to Kim?
Do you have one, Astor?
Hey,
Yeah,
Kim, did
she's
you
got
make a
I'm just
copy?
being
in
extra
color.
careful because of Dale's surgery. It's okay.
Okay, so, anybody have questions or comments about how JRAC, what JRAC does, or how JRAC overlaps with what we're doing? Anybody want to talk about that?
So they meet every 3 months?
The Community Corrections Advisor, yeah, they meet quarterly.
Okay.
Mhm, yeah.
Which doesn't seem like very much.
It seems like, and I am going to meet with Mary Ellen Decoff on Monday. And talk about, I told her, I copied her on this so that she would have my notes.
Mhm.
And we're gonna meet on Monday and talk about coordinating. She is gonna be the center point so that we don't have like telephone tag.
Mhm.
But I know at some point, there are other judges who have thoughts, like I was at a bar association meeting and one of the judges had mentioned, like, I know we're focused on criminal, but there are civil aspects like evictions and small claims court that we need to think about. And so at some point, I hope to be invited to a Board of Judges meeting where I can then talk about these things as well.
Mhm. It looks like Commissioner Thomas has her hand raised.
Yes, great comment.
Just to clarify, there's also a group that meets and does what we're doing, but on the judicial side as well, too, right? Or is that what this is?
Yeah, that's what I hope to talk to Mary Ellen, Judge Seekoff about on Monday and find out exactly what is going on.
Allegedly.
Yeah, yeah.
They are.
Who is meeting
Thank you.
and
Yeah, I
what
think
they're
so.
doing. But yes, I thought that there was a group of the prosecutor, public defender, sheriff, and
Right,
judge working together.
right. And I'd be curious as to when they are going to come back. We're supposed to all meet together too at some point when they're ready and we're ready. And I'm curious as to when that is, since you're going to be speaking with her anyway. That would be good to know.
Okay,
Thank you.
do you guys have a preference, like when you would like to have a joint meeting with them?
I would not tend to say we're ready.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm thinking you're not ready for that.
So maybe closer to end of summer, beginning of fall?
Yeah,
Mhm. I think that will help them also if we give them that kind of
yeah,
a,
let them know that
Lead
we'd
time.
like to meet
because I'm
them.
not sure how much.
Well, let me ask a question. Let me ask this question. Are there any budget implications? Do we need to be thinking in terms of what we're doing that might affect the 2023 budget?
I don't know that this group, I think that budget question will most likely be part of a different budget question.
So,
Okay.
You know what
yeah,
I mean?
I think
If we're
that
looking at a facility,
specific appropriations from either, I'm just spitballing, but bonding or ARPA, or, I mean, there are a lot of other things. So I agree. Unless we wanted to somehow make the contract with your position.
Mhm.
And that's what I was gonna
Permanent.
say. If all of a sudden we're having a lot more community meetings and a lot more hours invested in this, and then there's a lot more materials that we need or off-site materials that we need, I think that's when we would need to come back to the council for additional appropriations.
And that's easy enough to do. I mean, not that I enjoy doing it, but.
Come on, you run it.
You manage.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too, we always get kind of stressed out about budget time
Yeah.
and making sure we have everything. If something gets
Yeah.
forgotten, January, we can
Yeah.
come to council. You're not gonna have the money right away, but there'll probably be something else that we can.
But it would be better if we could foresee what
Oh,
we need
totally.
to have in
Yeah.
budgets.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you don't wanna,
Well, and one of I handed out a little handout, this slide, and let me see if I can find it to share. Hold on,
We lost.
Jennifer, is this helpful at all?
yes, ooh, look at you.
Can you see that?
yeah,
Oh, it's not
Can't read
helpful.
it.
Oh, it keeps moving.
it's gonna, because it is gonna drop when you go to,
Where's my,
Oh,
my
you
little
can't-
attachments? Remember?
You can,
it's
you're just trying to share
there.
screen? Is that what you're doing?
You have to keep that.
No, I can't.
you
'cause I
can't
don't-
share her screen because she's
I
not
can't share
connected.
my screen. Well, I will send this to you. There, if Julie, you saw it in the Community Voices for Health project meeting.
I'll scan it.
Yeah, there was a little handout. It was the first
Why
slide.
can't she just be given, oh, you're not on.
I'm not connected.
Yeah, that's the problem.
There you go.
I see.
This was a slide that Community Voices for Health created and shared, and
We'll
it
put
says
that fixed
public
next time.
health is everywhere and includes all of us. At the center is public health system, and then it has these little branches that go out. And one of those elected officials are on there, community, corrections are on there, law enforcement. You can see, the point is, all of these things impact public health. And Jennifer, I'll make sure to send this out. But my point of this is, I always, when I was the attorney for the health department, I always encouraged Penny Caudle to think about being, making sure she asked for enough stuff in her budget. Because the public health department impacts a lot of things. And so we may be thinking about, I don't want us to think too narrowly about just criminal justice like the sheriff or the prosecutor or the courts. I want us to think about prevention, and public health is certainly invested in that.
Still want to share it.
No, that's okay. I was like, I'll just email that out.
Okay.
Well, and I think you're absolutely right. Public health touches on everything. And we really saw that in Eve Hill's reports.
Mhm.
And I've seen it in jail tours. And so I think it's good that we shared this.
But I think we could almost say that all of these things touch criminal justice
They
at the
do.
same time.
I think you're exactly right, Lee.
Yeah.
Did you guys hear Lee's comment? All of these things, which I can list them, they're, doctors, community-based organizations, transit, drug treatment, healthcare providers, community health centers, schools, faith-based institutions, all parks and rec, all of those things affect criminal, the population, the justice served population. And to the extent that we serve people well, hopefully they will be less likely to end up in our correctional center.
Yes.
Or with a civil case.
Yes, or with a civil case. Because I remember when I was a deputy prosecutor, I would see a lot of the same families. I did juvenile court or child support enforcement. Then I might see somebody with a misdemeanor or a low-level felony. And you see a lot of the same, and I know that that's true here in Monroe County as well.
Mhm.
Okay, thoughts? I don't want to do the whole talking.
Okay, so we have met with Mary Ellen.
Okay,
Just,
But it was mostly to discuss the jail, really.
was it?
Yeah.
Mhm.
She was really just trying to make it clear to us that if we want to get anywhere with any of this, we have to do something about the jail.
Yeah. And then I think that
Yeah.
everybody's kind of agreed that.
so let me ask the people on Zoom, did you hear that? Lee said that they were talking about meeting with Mary Ellen, and that if we're gonna do anything, we've got to make sure we need to have a new facility so we have programming space. Guys, does anybody agree or disagree? Do they think that's crazy talk?
No, but what, in bringing in civic cases, we're talking about programming space at the jail, but I wonder if we would benefit from programming space not at the jail to help out more with those things.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that kind of blends in with how you guys are looking at things, which is kind of that before and after.
Right.
Right, that part. And recognizing that it all definitely connects, but you can easily, I think, expand from just the concept of a criminal involvement to the civil involvement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't catch the last part of what Lee was saying. Can you repeat that?
I'm sorry, I wish I didn't have to wear a
Oh,
mask.
no, you're totally fine. I understand. I just couldn't hear it. If you can just repeat it.
What I was saying is that when it comes to looking at the civic side of law involvement, the programming could be really useful there also, but maybe at the jail is not where we would want to do that. Someplace more conducive, maybe, to people who aren't yet in jail.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's where you were going too, is that thinking about this more holistically as a series of intercepts,
Yes.
and not just thinking about this as a jail process,
Right.
which I think we do all agree that something needs to happen with that jail. But then there's a much broader strategy here that includes all the intercepts that Eve Hill included in her report.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And my hope is that if we can do a good enough job, then we can build a jail that's not a whole lot bigger than what we have right now, but does have room for expansion at some later point, but not build a huge jail
Oh,
that
yeah.
can just get filled up.
I agree with that, Commissioner Jones.
And I think that programming space that you're talking about, are you guys thinking about, when you're thinking about this center, are you thinking of a criminal justice, or not even just a criminal justice, a justice campus?
Yes.
Yes, definitely a justice.
Okay.
campus.
And I would almost be wary of using the term
Justice.
criminal justice or even justice and start using terms like rehabilitation
Yeah,
or diversion and start using terms like that, because number one, like that's in the Indiana Constitution.
Mhm.
And number two is if we're not going to have an overcrowding problem in our jail again, we really need to be investing in diversion and reentry programs that are
Right.
effective.
So maybe we need to come up with a name.
Julie has.
Julie?
Yeah, I would just add that one of the things that we have been talking about lately as well is how to accommodate those in mental health crisis. And in some situations, they end up in a wing of a jail. And, I'm personally, I don't think that's appropriate. And I know one of the things we've talked about, just sort of, spitballing some ideas out there, is having a separate building in this campus area that to accommodate those who need, who are in mental health crisis, who need direct attention that is not criminal in nature.
Okay, so that's an excellent idea, and I want to ask you this. So one thing Eve said repeatedly in her report was figure out what the heck to do about Medicaid and get people covered. Now, so to park that idea for 1 minute, think about this. Remember when we had that grant proposal with Peter Finn to have counseling students, both undergraduate, master's, PhD level students, working with our population, and we tried to get we did a grant proposal for the what was it called at IU, Grand Challenge or Challenge. We didn't get it. The feedback was that there was too much money leaving the university and going into the community. If we're thinking about, this is a perfect time as we're thinking about what to build. And I've talked to Peter recently, Peter Finn again, I reached back out to him and said, hey, you want to think about this idea again? It was brilliant. I thought this proposal he came up with. There's clinical psychology at IU, there's counseling psychology at IU, there's School of Social Work, there's a School of Public Health. What if we were to reach out to the university and say, you need to train people to do counseling. You need to do research. We need practitioners. We need to build practitioners.
I think
Is
that,
there a relationship here?
I thought I sent it to you, and it's not like a broken record with this particular facility that's out in Arizona, but they have a separate mental health treatment facility. And it is, that if we did something like that and actually could contract with, as an education, part of the education side of IU, they also are supported by their local hospitals because it alleviates problems within their hospitals. Plus, if it's set up, and I only briefly grabbed this, is that yes, they can receive Medicaid funding and private insurance funding. So there is a way to actually make that more of a self-sufficient type of.
We put the building in place and they operate it.
Yeah.
One of the problems that Eve pointed out with Medicaid is that people are required to make a payment. It might be very small, but if they ever miss a payment, they're kicked off for 6 months and lose all insurance for 6 months. So right there is something that could make a huge difference if we could convince the state to change that, which I'm not a very good lobbyer. But,
Well, we have a lobbyist now.
that's true.
Richard
And I
Popper.
actually did bring that up to them, I think last fall or sometime,
And these
but I should
topics,
remind them.
and these topics are being talked about at the state level as well.
Right.
So perhaps there's some activity going on up there. I did call the jail overcrowding task force has a staff attorney listed on the website. So I left a message to say, hello, I'd like to talk to you. And so Mary Ellen, or Judge Leacoff is also very connected to the state. And
Yes.
so hopefully we can make some progress in that regard. I've got it on the
Although
list.
Eve had also mentioned that some communities had created a fund to help people pay and, if we strike out at the state, I think we shouldn't just give up, but
I
should look
agree.
at other methods
Mhm.
of,
Maybe that's where township government could come in, because
Yeah.
everybody is gonna be a township could perhaps help out, and we could coordinate with townships
yeah.
to provide this. I am having lunch as well with Kim Alexander in a couple of weeks to talk about township work as
And
well.
If I could get back to this idea about external collaborations, particularly with Indiana University, is that I think one of the things that we've shown that really works is in that first intercept, which is intercept 0, where people are in crisis.
Mhm.
And how do we intercept that jail pipeline when they're in crisis? And I think that's a great opportunity for use with IU. Similarly, I think as we look at what the county council has been allocating funding for within the jail, it's not for increased number of jailers, it's for mental health professionals. So we now have a nurse practitioner in the jail. We have, we just approved a second full-time person that is dealing with mental health. And that has ripple effects, right? So now there's yoga and there's therapy and there's access to medications and things like that. And I think that's where this can come into hand. And then the third area I think that these external relationships can help is in intercept 4, reentry.
Yes.
And that's just such a difficult thing to get right that I think we need all the help we can get to make sure that people don't fall into old patterns and end up right back in jail. And right now, I mean, we've got that warm handoff that's happening, but we are seeing a lot of reentry.
Peter Finn had some ideas about that too, and not that, he was just saying, he's done, research on addiction his whole career funded through the National Institutes of Health. And he said, that's the key piece, getting that right.
Yeah.
And it can't be a short thing. The
That's right.
reentry, and that may be part of our problem sometimes, is that we try to put too small of a Band-Aid on this on this issue.
And if the first report on the status of the jail, one of the key findings in that report is that it's not that we have an increased number of people coming into our jail. It's that we've got the same number of people coming back over and over and over again.
And an aging population.
That's
It
right.
also
Yeah.
pointed out that our population is
And it's staying
aging.
local,
And this, up to 70% do have mental health problems of one sort or another.
which is sensitive.
Now, we all know that and I said this to Peter, I think the university is more political than any governmental agency that I've ever worked for. And so I think that maneuvering through that system and how to do that is really important. He said he would talk to some of his colleagues at IU. He said clinical psychology does not have enough students, frankly, and they have a lot of boxes that they have to check that don't work well for us. Counseling psychology has more students. School of social work has more students. And then, of course, I have heard from a professor at IU in School of Public Health that they're less ivory tower-ish because they're supposed to be public facing. That's part of their thing.
And you're saying this, and I also presume that you're thinking that we're not just talking about the university, because we have so many resources here within our community
Absolutely.
that we
Yes.
really need to bring to the table and be part of this. Well,
Yes, we can't focus solely on.
you're right.
You want.
No, I was just saying, that's exactly right. And I think we need to be careful about thinking about IU as a singular entity, because depending on which programs we're talking about, we're going to probably be needing to interact at the same time with different folks in different departments and schools and specialties.
And not that easy to do, complicated sometimes.
You can't, I mean, there are obviously rules that apply across the university, but there are also a lot of rules, like you're pointing out, within different schools, programs and schools. But I think a lot of this might be, I would like to talk about what our overarching goals are in order to get to then kind of the list of programs we need to
Gotcha.
flesh out. Because until I think we can really get there, talking about a facility is, in my opinion, premature.
Okay, so what are and that was a question I had on that's a great segue, Kate, because in my questions, when I wrote down sort of what my list of things to do were, I wrote down some questions. And one of them was, what is this committee's? Because one of the tasks is to, under the direction and advisement of this committee, develop a strategic plan that reflects goals, priorities, and practices of this committee. So my question is, what are this committee's goals, priorities, and practices? Have they been identified, or is that something that we still need to identify?
I would say that broadly, it's to reduce the jail population to as small as we're able to.
Yeah, and you had listed 5 goals too.
Those are just
Your notes,
just some to get the
thoughts.
conversation started.
And those would be things that would lead up to.
Yeah, I said safety, legal compliance, that's sort of the constitutional compliance that Ken Ray was talking about, harm reduction, community-wide health, good stewardship. I just threw those out there. What are your goals?
I would add equity. So first of all, the first report identifies that there is an increase of women incarcerated. Second of all, there's a long history of racial minorities being targeted in incarceration. And third, there are in more recent times, and in history too, there's been a long history of ethnic minorities being targeted for incarceration. So I think looking at this through a lens of equity is important.
And Julie added a comment, reduced recidivism.
Reduce recidivism.
Yeah.
My chat here. Okay, yep, reduce recidivism. Thank you for keeping track of the chat for me.
But these are kind of a mix of goals and values.
Yeah,
And I'm not trying to get all into the semantics of it. However, if we can clearly articulate the goals, I think and I think that's part of the strategic planning process. So I believe we're starting in the right place by talking about values and priorities. But I think we really could use a guide.
Don't play games.
The next steps as we
Don't
go
play
through.
any games now.
so Julie, or you guys, did you guys hear all that? Jennifer says I was gonna say equity and recidivism as well. And
Yeah.
Kate said we could use a guide.
That's you.
What was the last one you said?
Yeah, but you just said we really could use a guide. That's actually in the job description.
Yeah,
which is- yeah, I'm the.
So I'm kind of circling back to your original. Have we a lot about, yes,
Okay.
but we have not clearly, I don't think.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
think
Yeah, like a
thank you.
sage or a.
Yes,
Gotcha.
yeah, sage, I like that.
It seems to me we need a clear path, and both of you were cutting out through that last exchange. It seems to me we need a clear path in terms of what we intend to have accomplished, what we think the other group, the more, justice side group that's simultaneously meeting, what are they going to accomplish? And at what point we work together. So I think in terms of goals, I'd like to see something more concrete in terms of, identify whatever. I mean, how do we know we've reached that point, right? That's what we need.
Yes, so you're saying, so what I would love to hear today is in this sort of conversation about what your values are and what.
If we have more sauce.
And
Jennifer, yeah.
Jen, could you mute?
she did.
Oh, thanks.
so I'm hearing, look at everything through a lens of equity. Like those are the glasses we're looking through. So everything is colored with our equity lens. And we're going to clearly articulate our goals, and we're going to separate our goals from our values. We're going to have a human guide in the process. That's me as the coordinator. But we're going to have some written goals and a clear path that it says, this is what we're doing in this committee. This is what JRAC is doing. And here's when we're going to sort of work together. So that what we're doing, what this other group is doing, and sort of a timeline. Do you guys have other values or goals you want to share with me?
I think that the values, the things you have listed here are great. I love them. And then adding equity, I think is important. I think the reduced recidivism is more of a goal. So, and that's where I started to get like, okay, I want to separate a value such as equity that's going to go through everything that we talk about. A value such as harm reduction,
Yeah.
I think.
I think that equity also needs to include economic status to a large extent, because just because so often people who have no means of their own are the ones who end up in jail forever and ever and costs the system a whole lot simply because they can't afford to get out of it.
Yeah, that's a huge rabbit hole. I
Yeah.
think,
Yeah.
because it goes as far back to our legislation,
Yeah.
that keeps people in particular areas and criminalizes behavior. And so that's a deep hole,
Yeah.
but it's not a wrong hole.
No, it's just maybe.
But as a value, I think we can make sure that every step we take, we're
We're-
attending to how what we're doing impacts that and how we can make sure to be more equitable
Yeah.
and put things in place to support.
So, and then I think to Julie's point, if I can take this back to what Julie was saying, and I think Kate, I saw you nodding, and I'm sure everyone's in agreement. Like, how do we define success? What does that look like? And I think in Ken Ray's report, he outlined 7 things that are just absolutely critical for us to do. And I think that's probably a good jumping off point.
Yeah, excellent.
And if I can read those out.
Please read. Yeah.
Okay, so number 1, there's a distinct lack of easily available data.
Yes.
So if we're going to partner with IU, there's no way to consistently measure and evaluate the effectiveness and efficiency of court and jail operations and practices. So number 1, transparency or data. Number 2, from 2003 to 2018, jail bookings decreased slightly, while the number of unique persons booked more than once increased significantly. So there's your recidivism. Number 3, people are staying in the jail for considerably longer periods of time. And actually, for those of you following at home, this is on page 13 of the penultimate study from him. Number 3, so considerably people are staying in the jail for considerably longer periods of time. Number 4, the jail facility is incapable of consistently ensuring and sustaining constitutional levels of inmate care and custody.
So that's a health and safety.
Mhm.
And
Illegal.
illegal. And illegal.
Well, so that's legal. The next one is health and safety. At 36 years old, the jail has far exceeded its structural and functional life cycle despite all its renovations.
Yeah.
Remediation of the real and potential risks posed by physical defects, inadequate architectural design, adverse impact on proper care and treatment, and security problems resulting from facility design and physical deterioration seem cost prohibitive at a provisional estimated cost exceeding $56 million. Number 6, court criminal case processing is significantly slower than the national model time standards developed from data on efficient court systems. And lastly, number 7, the number of criminal case continuances granted for felony and misdemeanor cases is extensive.
And I see a lot of that as falling into what the other groups should be, we hope are working on currently. And it would be nice to know where they've gotten with it.
Yeah, and I also would start with, do they agree with these?
Yes.
So I would fully expect them to come back and say, well, I take issue with this, or I take issue with this. And I think it's important to have a conversation in public that says, oh, here's why, you can look at that, and this is why Ken might have thought this, but here are the problems that result in this. Public defenders might say the state lab is taking too long. I have heard that the state lab has gotten caught up and that they're cognizant of that and they're trying to do a better job. They may say things like, and I've heard this, we'd love to do things differently. I can't do anything differently with that facility. I'm stuck. I have no other options. Now, we know the Stride Center is an option. We got to make sure, and is that a goal to make sure that we continue that?
Oh, yes.
Because I know they were in a 3-year grant, right? So.
It must be close
And
to.
Commissioner Thomas has had her hand up.
Commissioner Thomas, hello? Somebody else is going to have to watch the chat because I am typing.
Hello. So along those lines, yes, we need to map out which committee is deciding what, but I think there are some gaps based on what we've just talked about from that list that are things that we've talked about addressing, which are not on that list at all, but are certainly some of the things that we've been talking about in terms of mental health and reducing recidivism. That's not on their list, and I get why their list has what it has on it, but I do think, yes, we need to figure out which group is doing what from that list and at what point do we need to come together. And that would be a great question for Judge Dekoff, who's leading that other group. I also think that we need to, as council members and commissioners, we need to have some clarity about our role in discussing a facility, the actual jail facility itself. Is that something that we're going to go ahead as a group and make a recommendation to our colleagues? Because I think that is our job collectively, get input from the other group but really it's up to these two bodies to make the final decision. So are the bodies as a whole going to make that decision, or are we going to make a recommendation, right? There's a lack of clarity about our roles that I would love to have kind of resolved sooner rather than later, just so we know what we are working toward. I don't want our process to slow down the process of looking at new land and the new facility. So maybe that needs to be a separate conversation, but at the same time, it belongs here too.
Okay, so let me address that, because I did talk with Judge Dekoff about that very thing today. They fully recognize that the commissioners have the authority to sign contracts and to make decisions on buildings, that that's in your bailiwick. And that you could say, here's the facility you get. We got to supply you with courts. We got to supply you with this. This is what you get. Now, they would love to be part of a conversation that says, let's dream for a moment. Let's dream. Let's get together and dream about what we want. And the sheriff would have to be part of that, and the council, that they know the council has to write the check. Now, remember that Judge Galvin was a county attorney, so he understands how all this works too. And I'm told that facility, they sort of did this dream big, let's put this together. And then the price tag was too high. And so they had to cut and say, well, this is all we can afford. So I do think that we have to, I think that the commissioners, and this is me as a former county attorney talking, I think the commissioners can say with the council, because you got to do this together. If you're going to buy land, you're like, yep, that's where we want to buy it. Let's get that done. Okay, check, that's off the list. Now let's get together and dream about what it is that this is going to look like and what kind of space do we need. And then now you can do that before you hire a consultant to help you build, or you can hire a consultant and then do the dreaming. I think it can happen either way. And she's about ready to bite her tongue. Go ahead. I know. Body language. Go ahead.
So I think a couple of things were running through my head. First of all was, I think the question is it the purview of this group here to make recommendations regarding a facility to the rest of your
That's what
cohort?
Julie's question was about.
Yes, and so I think, and I think that we have, previous to this, we kind of danced around that particular concept. I think that my recommendation to you guys would be that you would do that.
You would do what?
You would make the recommendation to your cohorts about a facility.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think that before everybody starts dreaming, because we do dream very well here, is that you have the land surveyed,
Mm-hmm.
and you have an environmental done on it, and you actually kind of come up with an idea of a site plan, so that at that point you're in a better position to speak with your architect, that's going to actually do this. And I think that as you guys move forward through your intercepts, that's going to help you to decide what you want as part of the dreamy part and the good part.
I think we also need to coordinate with the criminal justice
You
side
have to.
very
Yes,
heavily.
yes.
Before we make a recommendation, I think we need to know that they feel comfortable with it.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
I put some notes in chat, so you could see those.
Yes, so let me read these.
So yes, we would make a recommendation, but that would be based on our conversation with the other group, right? Which is what Lee just said. So it sounds like we're all on board on that one. And no, we don't want a site plan yet. You want to understand the buildable area. Then you have the dreaming conversations. Then you bring in the developer who makes the site plan.
So based on your conversations with the other group, you then have recommendations for a facility, is that right? that you talk to the other group.
Yeah,
Mhm.
And I don't think there's anything that prevents us from doing that as soon as land is acquired. I really
No,
don't.
no,
No, I don't either. And I can tell you that I've already asked the question, do you care, do you want everything co-located? And the answer is heck yeah, we
Mhm.
want everything co-located. And so I do think that I don't think that group is gonna tell you guys what to buy and where to buy land. I don't think that that's
No.
their position. I don't think that's so comfortable. One of the things that I hope to do, and I said this to the council before he left, and I know I've said it to Judge Ecoff, is I think government works best when everybody owns what they own, right? So the judges can't say, well, we can't build buildings, so we can't do this. And, the council can't say, well, all we do is write the check, and, commissioners can't say, oh, all we do is, buy the land and sign the contracts. Everybody's got to own their little piece, and we'll work together, and this thing is going to get done. And we're going to it's a giant project, but we're going to break it down in little pieces. And we're going to be there before you know it.
yeah, and I think before we even buy the land, it would be beneficial to ask Judge Decoff what criteria they would want included in the decision whether or not the land was appropriate. I think
Okay.
that we've already probably thought of most of that, I would hope. But I mean, like, we said in the city limits, so there's transportation big enough for, and are there other criteria that we haven't thought of that they recognize as being really important?
I think the location, from my conversations, I had suggested like, hey, what about all this land we own out by the airport? And they're like, no, that's way too far away. So I do think that proximity to things is important. And so I think that you guys, you guys are probably, I can certainly find out what the criteria are when I meet with her, but I do think that you guys could probably make a decision once the council and commissioners are comfortable. And then and I get Andrew's point, make sure that, the environmentals are done, if there's anything that needs to be done, that you have room for expansion, all that kind of business that you know about. And then we could probably have a joint meeting. Maybe we're not gonna solve all the world's problems in that first meeting.
Margie, can you hear me? Hi, it's Molly.
Yeah, hi Molly.
So I think Jeff might have already reached out to Judge Decoff and had a little bit of a conversation along those lines. So you might check with him to see what they talked about.
Okay, gotcha. So that leaves me, do people still have questions about that topic? Knowing that Jeff probably has reached out to them, do you guys have any questions about how what you guys are left to do? Go ahead, counsel.
Go ahead.
So you have some really interesting points, Margie, in your document about engaging the public, and I think that's important as well.
Okay.
And I'll leave that to a future conversation about who we deem as stakeholders, who needs to have a seat at the table, and how we achieve public comment. But to do this in a conference room without going to the public, I think would be not good.
So let's talk a little bit about that. Are you saying before a decision is made to purchase land, you engage the public?
I would not. The land is not exactly falling off the.
So
Go ahead.
this is not an answer to your question though, but it's sort of related.
So I don't have an answer to that question. I haven't thought enough about it. I think it's a good question.
I feel that the things that we want to take place on that property have to have a little bit more definition in order for us to know what the qualities of that land have to have. I mean, I agree, we've got a list, and the proximity to services that, aren't movable, and the transportation and that kind of. But, I mean, in the things I've heard, it's like, do we need 100 acres? Do we need 20 acres? Do we, those sorts of things, I don't know. And is there are there other things about the property itself that we should be aware of? To me, it all goes back to what are we doing on that property? And until I get a little bit better idea of what that is, I have a hard time jumping ahead. I guess.
Julie has her hand up. again.
Julie, do you have something?
You're muted, huh?
You're mute, Julie?
Sorry, I flicked back and forth too quick. So I see what Kate's saying. Here's my take on it. I think we need to acquire as large a piece of property as we can that fits as many criteria as we can. I don't think we're going to have 50 things to choose from at this point.
Yeah.
So what I would recommend is that we get a list as soon as possible from the other committee, which I don't even know what its name is, the mystery committee. Task them with giving us what we should consider. And I think it's too early for public input because nothing's going on the land yet, but I think we make the best choice we can about the land as soon as we can. And then that's when we start talking about what goes, what do the buildings look like? How big are they? What are their functions? That's where we really need tons of public input. And we need to also work with the other group throughout that whole process on that. But then when we're talking about specifics like programming, that seems to be a separate conversation that's going to lag behind the other just by time, just because of timing. But I think that's another one where we're going to at some point need to work with the other group on that specific aspect. So I guess that's why I'm trying to think through what our goals are when we're going to do them and how we're going to achieve them. And if we do, I think we need to separate out land and buildings, land first, then buildings programs, and figure out how we're going to do those things together.
Yeah, and then if I may add, what I meant when I was talking about the site map is a site evaluation so that we know what can be done in particular areas of the property. You don't want to obviously build a facility over a harsh.
I think we want to know that. I think we would want to know that before we bought it.
Yeah.
You would definitely. Molly may want to jump in here too if she knows something, but I would certainly think any purchase agreement you enter into says, I've got this period of time for my due diligence. And after that period, I do all my due diligences within these 4 months or 3 months, whatever period of time you pick. And I get to, as the buyer, I get to back out at any time if something's not acceptable during that period of due diligence. That's typically how we would handle that.
Yeah, and I think that's how we would do it.
So I heard land first and buy the land before there's a giant public process. I mean, obviously you will be having public conversation in the decision making when you make these decisions in public. So there will be opportunity for the public to engage in that conversation because this will all be done in a public meeting. But the public comes in when we're talking about buildings and programs. And I don't think you can divorce buildings and programs.
No. I don't
You have to talk about those together.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Is that right? You guys think? Okay, gotcha. Okay. And so, and do we agree that the land conversation or commissioners and council?
Yeah.
Okay. Knowing that, I made a note though that we do want to know generally, and Molly said, the criteria that, or like, are there any deal breakers? Like, you don't want to find out they're gonna flip their lid if you buy something.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, that's got not enough trees on it or
Right.
something. Okay. So back to what Kate keeps saying. Kate says, I need to know what we're doing on the land. I want to know what we're doing there before we buy it. So tell me what would be enough information in like, what's sort of the outline, the basic like framework that would make you feel like you had enough information? Let me say this. If you knew there was going to be a correctional center and the courts and the public defenders and the prosecutors and program space if we work with teaching facilities or we work with not-for-profits, if we have program space in the courts, so the counsel in the court and CJAM and, you know, and if you'll notice in this other thing I sent, there's an idea at the state level about let's have a pro se litigant space so people can make copies if they don't have an attorney. Go ahead. A separate mental health facility. Okay. So yes, a separate mental health facility that, you know, we build so somebody else operates it. As
She also typed work release.
Yeah.
Work release. That is the work release is something we would want to talk with the courts about. I've heard repeatedly over the years that maybe work release is not, you know, that they don't think it's necessarily a great idea. I don't know. We'll talk about that.
Well, it was pretty much brought to an end by Sheriff Kennedy, who just announced that he simply did not have the staff for it.
Well, the other problem with work release, and again, this would be something I think that the court needs to have that definite input in. But the issue with work release is if you trust someone to leave your facility during the day or at night to go to work, you're going to make them come back, then why not trust them to be at home?
Right.
And so that's been some of the change in how, you know, people are looking at the damages that can be done to someone.
We hear from, I've heard from community members who ask about why not work release. And that's why I'm saying I would like to have the other group chime in on it and get us to that place where we're either going to incorporate it or we're done talking about it.
Gotcha. Okay, gotcha. So,
Right.
and also, Julie, that brings a great point up. It's a good idea to talk about that in public to educate the people about why they don't think it's such a fabulous, because it sounds great in concept, but here are the pros and here's the cons. Have that conversation. Because part of what we're going to be doing as we do this is we're going to be, in every conversation we have, hopefully people will tune in and get a little bit more insight into the process.
Well, and that's why external collaborators are important too, is because we're not living this and we're not in the research. And there's probably some great evidence-based practices out there that we don't even know about. Or there's, you know, a study that just came out that said that crisis lines don't work. Don't invest in those, or, you know, whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's
Yeah, and
kind of my brain.
That was an example. I wasn't
Okay.
saying like that there's
Okay.
research out there. I was just saying
Could you
like,
provide that citation?
yeah.
It probably depends on how it functions.
so you're saying research might inform our decision making?
Well, I would hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As we're talking about research, something, and this may just be the way my mind works, but personally, I find it disturbing that I don't know why there are so many women in the jail when there didn't used to be. Why recidivism has jumped so high. Why the age is going up so much. You know, I think if we understood why those things are happening, it would be a lot easier to come up with programming, especially in advance, to prevent them.
And so let me ask that, good point. Is that a question that you think that we should ask our courts, our sheriff, and say, why? Do you know? I think our study pointed to this is a problem, but didn't tell us why.
Yeah.
And so they may know, they may not know, because remember, one of the things the report told us as well is we don't have good data. We don't share data. And guess what the state's report said? They
No.
also don't, they recognize we have too many computer systems that don't talk to one another,
Yeah,
and we don't mine the data in a way that's really helpful
yeah.
or collect it necessarily.
I think also that needs to be informed by existing research that isn't
That-
local as well,
That's
because
what I think.
that's where you can make the connection. We
Mhm.
found this. You ask the further questions by looking at existing research that generally says this is why this happens.
And are
I'm
these
not saying to
problems?
the exclusion of
No, but I'm
local,
just saying, are these problems things that are being experienced everywhere? Or is there something in our community that's driving
Yeah.
right.
problems that they aren't having elsewhere?
And it's important to point out too, that Ken Ray has listed funding sources in his
Yes,
report.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and
Yes,
so did he.
and so did Eve.
Right.
And Eve addressed, to Julie's point, Eve addressed some of the mental health issues that Ken did not have on his point of 7.
Yeah,
Eve addressed some of that.
That's right.
And I think Eve worked with, remember, she's on the board for the Bazelon Center for Mental Health.
uh-huh.
And so she listed some other good programs in other parts of the country that we might want to look at. And that was something that Peter Fenn mentioned as well, which was, we've got to look and see what's working elsewhere. I know he's doing some research in Honolulu, and he had told me before, it's remarkable the similarities between Honolulu and Bloomington. Yeah. And so,
So you had asked a question about how much, I don't know what you said, how much do I need to know
yeah,
about what's happening on the land in order to be comfortable
yes.
moving forward?
Yeah.
Is that what you were asking?
Yeah, tell me what's going to make you feel comfortable, like you have enough information to make a decision.
Well, I think that understanding the number and scope of programs that we want to ensure have a space there. So, I mean, this type of brainstorming is great. I think it needs to be tied directly to all of the intercepts that were listed and the recommendations made to make sure that we've covered, at least to the extent that we want to cover, what's been, presented to us as the ideal solution. And then, so I guess a framework, I would like, I'm a very graphic person. So to me, I'm seeing like, here's the issues that were identified. Here are the proposed solutions or interventions tied to the intercepts. Which of these things have to be co-located?
Right. And what can be.
Okay.
Which of things
Yeah.
do we want co-located but don't have to be? And what are the trade-offs?
And what
And so,
are
yeah, I'd
things
like a lot
that-
of information.
What
Okay.
are things that
Okay.
already exist that could be
Right.
made more effective
And accessible.
by either bringing them to the campus or
Exactly.
supporting them in some other way?
Exactly.
I think something we need to look at is juvenile services. Because they already do a fair amount of programming, and a lot of that would be very relevant
Yeah.
to the whole, a broader population.
Right.
So like YSB, when you say juvenile services and juvenile
Yeah,
programs,
that's
you're
right.
thinking about like
Yeah.
Yes,
YSB.
yeah,
And,
like
yeah,
they do a lot of kind of family
Mhm,
training and things like that, which I think probably are really important
I have long said,
beyond them.
good quality childcare and good early education is crime prevention.
Yeah,
And so, they have their evidence-based practices show that, when you build this strong foundation, and start building those life skills and those resiliency skills early on, translates into those people not ending up in the system.
Yeah.
So Kate, you said, I want to make sure I got this right. You want to know, you want to understand the number, the scope of the programs, so that we tie these programs to the intercept. So essentially, we say, here are the issues, here are the proposed solutions, tie them to what 0 through 5, what's the intercept, what ones must be co-located, which ones do we just want co-located, what already exists in our community, what would be more effective if sort of handled differently than it's being handled now in the community. Is that right?
You're getting even more in depth than I think I was, but.
Yeah. The only thing I would add to all of that is what we have to keep into consideration, land availability.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
And,
and we may dream big and then have to reconfigure some
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
dreams. Maybe not everything will happen right at that land.
hopefully you will be able to find land that would
Yeah.
provide for that and expansion as needed. But
But
that's
what
the,
Julie was talking about with another building that's more or less pulls different services and everything all
Mhm.
together, that might actually work better in a different location than, I mean, I'm
Yeah.
not saying, I don't know if it would, but
Mhm.
that might be something that we
Julie-
would think about.
Julie,
I just would like some clarification because at one point, the county, way back when I was just on the council, the county had looked at creating a juvenile treatment center, rehabilitation center that was going to be rather large. And it was part of the goal was to accept intakes from other counties if needed, and this would be more criminal than not. So I would think we just need to be very clear as to whether or not that's, because when Lee raised the issue of juvenile services, that's where my mind went. And I think we need to be very clear as to whether or not that's something we want to do. I personally don't want to get into the game,
That's
but
not where my mind was going
Yeah.
at all.
Yes,
I know where
yeah.
your mind
So,
is
okay, so I wasn't thinking that way either.
I know, but people in the community remember what happened
Yeah.
in that time frame. So
But since that happened, or
Our
maybe
numbers are
right
down.
around the same time, Charlotte Zietlow and Guy Loftman and a few other people came up with a whole plan that was supposed to solve all kinds of problems, and it just got dropped in 2008 when the economy kind of blew up.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you,
Our numbers are down.
yeah, the juvenile numbers, well, I don't know, I haven't heard recently, but they had been down. But I do think that, that juvenile services is definitely something that you want to talk to the court and
Yes.
probation
Yeah.
about,
Yeah.
because they've got that down.
Yeah, Judge
Really
Galvin's
well.
really.
No,
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
talking more in terms of they can possibly help direct us towards certain kind of programming
Oh, totally.
and all of that kind of thing.
Yeah, and that I think will be part of the, when we talk about what programs, what are the issues, what are the problems, what are the programs, and then what space you need for that. So to go along with that vein, which is, I think, Kate's vein of thinking, which is, before I can tell you what to build, I need to know all of this information first, so that we then build appropriately. Is that right? And it would help me if this screen were that way. So
I know,
Yes,
now-
wouldn't it?
Well, we just need to
You
sit-
need to be
You
done.
need to
Yeah.
be down here.
That's brilliant.
It might be a little easier to move you.
That is,
President of the council right there.
when these things come up at my house, I always tell my husband, I didn't take physics. I don't know.
We're not the engineer here.
we were just going to call TSD to move the whole thing around for you.
Okay, so remind me next time we have a meeting, I'm at that end of the room. 'Cause I'm like,
Yes.
I'm trying to look both ways. So that's brilliant, Kate.
Well, my work is
So I want to be cognizant of the time too, because I could be here all night long talking to you guys about this stuff, and I'm happy to stay as long as you guys need, but I don't know who has other meetings you have to get to.
Generally,
Okay,
this is
we
an
keep
hour
going.
meeting.
I have a child in the other room that needs to go home and have dinner.
And this
Okay.
is generally an hour.
Now, so here's, then let's get to talk about the structure, my structure questions. I will be putting together the agendas, but I want to know, does anybody else care about the agenda or want to approve it before I send it out?
I think
Yeah.
I would love to have an agenda beforehand because I'll be honest, trying to read it like today, a few hours before, I kind of feel like I've lost a little bit. So it helps me at least like the day before so I can prep the night before. And it also just agendas just help the meetings flow better and it helps us stay on task. So I would highly recommend an agenda, and if so, if it can get to us the night before, that would be great.
Gotcha. So here's a question. You don't legally have to have an agenda, but you want one. Does everybody agree with that?
Yes.
Everybody wants one.
And I didn't even know you had sent that email.
Yeah.
There are times when I can't keep that close track of my email.
So I will definitely get it out early. You want an agenda. Do you guys want, can I put the agenda together totally on my own, or does somebody in this committee want to be the person that reviews it?
You can do it.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
could you also put it on the calendar entry where the public can get the Zoom link?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like a council meeting
I
or
can't,
commission?
but I can get somebody. I
Somebody,
don't have access to do that, but I can get it to Dina 72 hours ahead of time.
Because that way Linda
Yeah.
Brady or Jim
Yeah.
Shelton or whomever can
Yes,
also.
Yes. Okay, so we do want to have agendas. I can create that. Don't need to get approval, but I will get it to everybody in advance and out on the website. Okay.
And-
There's some,
Yeah, Julie.
Julie, agenda should include what we have to
yes.
cover and what we can address if we have time. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Must do and if we have time to do. Okay. And every 2 weeks is what the schedule is. I am out of the country June 15th. And I will be up in the Eiffel Tower. My son's
Oh.
18th birthday is June
Oh,
15th.
cool.
And we're
Yay.
taking him to Europe for a graduation trip. So I will be out of the country. Can we skip the 15th and do the 22nd? Could we do that?
That works better for me.
Yeah.
okay, so is June 1st a meeting?
We have June, yeah, we have June.
Oh, I'm
1st.
sorry, I see it right here.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
that's okay. We have June 1st. And then we were gonna do June 15th, but we would do June.
Because it's the first and third.
Yeah, but we would do
Wednesdays.
the 1st and the 22nd.
Okay,
And then do you want to stick with the 29th as well? I think we probably have more than enough work.
yes.
I do
And then we
too.
get back on schedule. for-
And will the meeting time still be 4:30 or are we meeting over the lunch hour or what are we doing?
You guys all decide, this seems to be the best time for everybody to be able to actually meet here.
The lunch hour is tough for us because Wednesday's commissioner meeting day, and when we have a
Right,
meeting,
right.
it may be short
Yeah.
or it may be hours and hours long. So it's really tough for us to say, oh, we'll be done at noon to meet. So we can, I'm happy to, now that finally I gave finals Tuesday, I'd be happy to talk again about revised dates or times if that's everyone's wish, but I know a lot of work went into picking this day and time.
Yeah.
I don't want to dismiss that effort, Angie.
Thank you. You saw me grumping over here.
No, I think Councilmember Crossley and I will probably kind of be juggling childcare pickup around this time, but we can make it, I think.
Do
Yeah,
we
well,
need-
this is the last week of school. And
Would-
I would have been in person today, but our kids just got home at 5 after being done at 3:45. So with school being out, 4:30 on Wednesday should work.
If we moved it up earlier to say 4, does that help anybody or that's
even worse.
It's even worse. Okay.
Because summer camps will generally get off around that time anyway.
Gotcha.
So
Do you want to move it slightly later?
let's respect the process.
Yes.
Let's keep it at 4:30 and then that will force me to communicate with my spouse.
Okay. Well,
I second that.
here's the thing, yeah, I know childcare is an issue and I absolutely respect that. I would say that if you're finding that your timing, that you would prefer a different time, let us know. Because we do have meetings on the second Wednesday in the afternoon of the month, but otherwise, as long as we're in the after 1 or 2 p.m. category or time frame, we're usually pretty good in terms of commissioners' meetings.
Right.
So if you want to change it, I'm totally open to hearing that option thrown out there. So if that helps you, I'm much more flexible than I was 2 days ago.
I appreciate that. Let's just keep it the way it is. And then if we have a problem, we'll communicate.
So we have the
I agree.
first,
Is this room going to be the best place? I mean, I'm fine with it, but
That's where it is at this point in time, and again,
yeah,
as this
let's just
evolves, we can.
rethink it, but for now, it's fine.
And so June 1st, June 22nd, June 29th, July 13th, July 27th, we're set to go every within 2 weeks.
okay,
in this
that's
room.
different than what's on my little paper, which is fine. That's-
We have June 1st, June 15th, we're canceling.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
then you said July 6th,
No, it's
No,
right, that July 6th is
Oh,
on the paper.
Let me
Oh,
look, then
it's okay.
maybe the paper's right and maybe.
I don't know.
yeah, July 6th. I
Let me
may be
look
gone.
here. I've got,
and that, and we can
And, yeah,
cancel them
I
as we
mean,
go along.
it's- And even if I'm gone, I might be able to join by Zoom.
Mhm.
let me look at the Monroe County, let me look at the webpage because the meeting dates are already up there.
Right.
So that may just have been Margie's little brain saying the wrong date. The paper might be, I would trust the paper before I trust you. Hold on. One sec. Meetings. It went June 15th to July 6th, so skip, the 29th was me saying that.
Okay.
The paper was right,
Okay,
okay? Thank you for pointing that out. So
Mhm,
June
mhm.
1st.
And it's not really
June
every 2
22nd.
weeks, it's the first and third, because
Oh,
every 2 weeks
Oh.
makes it a.
Gotcha, first and third.
Yeah.
Times a month.
okay.
First and third Wednesdays of the month, yeah.
First and third. Okay, good thing we got you, Angie. Okay. So I've made notes based on today's meeting and then we'll work on framing up some of these. So we'll have minutes and we'll get them to you, right? To be posted and also you guys, I'll talk to Angie about questions about administrative, but I'm assuming you guys would like to have a Dropbox, a county sort of Dropbox that this stuff lives in for you to access?
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
I can get that set up for you.
Okay. So on the county network,
Well, the Dropbox
Yeah.
is not going to necessarily be on the county network. It's gonna be- That's the whole purpose.
Like
that'll
in the
help.
cloud.
Yeah, it's in the cloud. So you want a Dropbox that we're going to give you
Yes.
access to as well as this group here.
yes, I just know that I don't want to screw around with anything that's IT related.
Mhm.
It tends to be how I feel.
Okay.
I will work with Eric and we'll get you guys set up.
So I will keep you informed with my other conversations. I do have some, again, meetings scheduled with people to talk about them, community groups. Are there any community groups that right now you're like, Margie, you have to go right out there and meet with those people immediately?
Well, I think Stride, but you were there, so,
Yeah.
and I think it's worth at least keeping them informed and,
And can you keep me, can I get an invite to know when they meet again?
yeah.
Okay.
And I think that I'm still part of the I don't know,
Housing?
Yeah,
the housing group.
Yeah.
And I really, going back to the original,
The health.
this perspective, they are also seeing that this is the perspective of the people who need, homes and stable housing.
Let's see the HMC.
Yes.
Community voices.
That,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
And I think that definitely we'll get you hooked up with Mary Morgan.
Oh,
Is
yeah,
she
I did
the-
already have copies of her.
Wonderful.
Yep, I already met with
Excellent.
Mary and
I
I met
really
with,
think-
and I met with the front.
Good,
Wonderful, because
good.
I think
And
that
Ruben
group is
Martin.
really
And
going.
yes, and I met with Ruben
But
Martin.
you
Oh,
also
good.
have to meet with,
Yes, I need to meet with the other candidate as well,
Mhm.
absolutely. And I've been making sort of a list, if I may need to reach out to you guys for contact information that I don't have,
Sure.
if you
Mhm.
guys
Sure.
have it. But if you think if there's somebody that I should be meeting with, let me know. I am meeting with Kim Alexander. They don't, I ask if they collect information, like if people, do they know if people are served in our justice system, either in the civil or the criminal thing? They don't keep it. She's like, look, unless they tell us that they have like probation user fees to pay, or they, or they've got an eviction case. But our township government is something, we're gonna just have to continue to work with them on a lot of things.
And I think that's where a community coordinator kind of comes into play. I know that was something that was talked about with the Housing First project, and and about how helping somebody get from point A to point B. And so I really think that if we could look at a coordinator, maybe actually you're going to need a lot more than just one. But
well, it's almost like one time Angie and I both had an email one day about somebody who was going to be falling through the cracks of the system. And it took about 64 emails in a day, but we were able to get the person to a case manager.
Yeah.
But it wasn't easy, and it wasn't, and if you didn't know who to call, it'd be nearly impossible, and most people would have given up. But yeah, that's the thing right there.
Do you think that it would be a good idea to
Yeah.
meet with certain individuals such as why am I blanking? Maybe social workers within the community, as well as Forrest Gilmore, those types of individuals. I understand the importance of meeting with, like groups, but and I know I see here that community members is one. I'm just one person in particular that I'm thinking of that I know as a social worker is Danielle Bird in the community. And I can chat with her and introduce, but just wanted to get your thoughts about that.
I absolutely think that's a good idea. And I had Martha Selk in legal send me a list, and this is something we can put in the Dropbox. It was a list that county legal, we put together when working with Eve, of all of the various social service agencies. It was like 256 different agencies.
It was amazing.
And also, I picked up the other day, which is another great resource, is the South Central Community Action Program. They have a list on the back of their, the Director of Agencies and Services. And I can tell you as well that one of the project ideas that came from, I was talking with Liz Bernard, Community Voices Bernard, a year and a half ago probably, about building an interactive map with GIS so that it's broken down by township, and that you could go to it and say, like, within this township, here are where the, grocery stores are, here where the community centers are, here's the police station, so, on their map dots for all of these services within that, throughout the county. And that's what, like, basically these agencies would be listed on that.
Yeah.
I think, and what I want to interject here is, instead of going, again, individuals, not to take away, I totally agree with what Jennifer said, but we have a tendency to go into these silos. And one of the things that I keep pushing for the Housing First group is reaching out, extending your contacts, so that we're all working together, as opposed to we're working over here, they're working over here.
I agree.
So a lot of the purpose of the Stride Coalition is to bring together
I think that's
those people, and I think someone it would be worth talking to, and of course I can't think of her name, but I'll find it.
Okay.
Is the person at Cook who's coordinating all of that?
Yes, with
she would have
James, last name James.
I'm sorry.
British accent.
I don't think she's the one who she's with Cook, and she might be the best one, but there's someone at the very least, she would have all the contacts and just have that general information.
The map should not be on GIS, but the data, yes, Julie, that's it. But I can tell you that Tron has the ability to share the data. He mentioned that when we were talking about it before. Somebody has to be able to access the information through a license that Tron has.
That's
and
right, yeah.
He's already got that license, and Kim Alexander is already working on that with an intern this summer. So I can tell you more about that.
Yeah, people can't access the GIS easily to look at a map, but they certainly can we can put a copy or an image of the map. It can be printed and it can be put on a website, but you don't want to rely on people having to get into GIS because we all can access it, but it's very difficult to do. And it's not, we need something very simple and straightforward and available.
Gotcha. Okay, I think that's in the works. Okay, anything else before we wrap up? Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
you
Hi,
guys.
Margie,
Yeah.
thanks for taking
Thank
this on.
All right.
Yes, I
okay.
love having
All right.
you here.
Bye, everybody.
Margie.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.